This is the Needs More jQuery talk called Using Advanced JavaScript in Atlassian Plugins. I was thinking about it. I'm not sure that's really the exact right title just because I don't want to scare anyone away with the using advanced JavaScript. It's really more, I would say, about using jQuery and AUI to create better public plugins with less work. It's not about hardcore JavaScript. It's about us giving you the tools to easily integrate advanced JavaScript into your plugins. So I'm going to talk a lot about the Atlassian user interface, AUI, or as I like to call it, AUI. So I was sitting there watching Scott give his keynote yesterday, and I was trying to figure out, well, I was listening, of course, but I was also trying to figure out how I wanted to sort of introduce this talk, and I had sort of struggled with that. And I was watching him go over the Jira 4.2 stuff, and I kept thinking everything he showed, I was like, well, that's an AUI, and that's an AUI. And so these are actually Scott's slides right now, and so I was like, well, that's just an AUI dropdown, and so is that, and those two, and all of those over there, those are all AUI dropdowns, and that's just an AUI dialog, and that's styled with AUI forms. That's the AUI toolbar. That's another AUI dialog, and that thing, well, that's not an AUI yet. But we were just talking about it last Thursday, and we're going to try and put it in AUI. So what's the point of that? The point is that AUI is driving a lot of our UI innovation within Atlassian. And I want to hopefully show you with this talk that it can easily help drive yours too, if you want it to. So who am I? My name's Zach. I am a front-end developer, do a lot of JavaScript, CSS on the San Francisco integration team. And so John Kodemal earlier kind of explained that we write a lot of plugins. So I'm in the same boat a lot of you guys are. I have the same tools. I can bend the ears of people, but I'm working with the same stuff you guys are. So that's the who. So throughout this talk, I want to cover the what, the why, the how, and the where of AUI. So what the Atlassian User Interface Library is, why we chose jQuery and Atlassian, why we think that you should choose AUI as a tool to build upon, how to use AUI, I'll include a coding example in there, where AUI is now and where AUI is headed. And then I'll leave some time at the end for any questions you guys might have. So what is the Atlassian User Interface Library? This is why I say AUI, because I can't always get it all out. This is taken off of our developer documentation on confluence.atlassian.com. Reusable, cross-browser tested JavaScript, CSS components. We built it for, obviously, our applications. What does that really mean? I like to think that it means less work, more awesome. In that the idea is that you guys spend less time doing the menial, JavaScript, cross-browser, whatever, and you have more time to kind of focus on making your plugin awesome. You don't have to worry about how to create a modal dialog. It's already there for you, so you can just focus on making your plugin as awesome as possible. So what does AUI give you? The first thing is that it wraps jQuery. It's important for a couple of reasons. The first is that means jQuery is available on every screen of all of our applications. You don't have to import it separately or anything. It's just there. And it also means that we've namespaced it under the AJS namespace. So if you do want to work with another library, a prototype or whatever, we're not going to get in your way because we use AJS.dollar instead of dollar and stuff like that. AUI also gives you a set of JavaScript components to use and a set of JavaScript utilities. So these are things that we've sort of simplified some of the things we found ourselves doing over and over, doing across products. We've put those into a package so that they're available for all of our products internally as well as for you guys. And some ready-to-go CSS. This is, I think, a big one. A lot of you are probably really awesome programmers, but sometimes that doesn't always flow into the CSS world. And so we've created out-of-the-box styles, so you don't have to worry about the cross-browser inconsistencies and stuff. I want to just briefly touch on AUI versus AJS. This question has come up a couple times this week. I always refer to it as AUI. because I like saying owie, I don't know. But really, I'm just talking about all of the JavaScript and all of the CSS that's included. When I talk about AJS, I'm usually referring specifically to the JavaScript library, but they're interchangeable. If you've always thought of it as AJS, I'm talking about all that same stuff. I just want to run through a few quick examples of where you might have seen owie. If you're not familiar with owie, then you probably don't know in our applications when it's being used. So stuff like the dialog. This is the user status dialog in Confluence. And inline dialog, if you've ever created an issue in Jira, which I'm sure all of you have, that's done with an inline dialog. We've drop downs everywhere. This is taken out of Bamboo, but you see them all across our products. And forms, this one might not be as exciting for all of you, but it's exciting for me. I don't know if you've ever styled forms, but it's such a pain, and it's always trying to get all the input fields the right length and get the labels lined up correctly. So with just like a standard set of classes on your HTML, the owie CSS will take care of all that stuff for you, so you don't have to worry about it. So that's what owie is, and I just want to talk briefly about why owie is built on top of jQuery as opposed to maybe another library. Most of you probably know what jQuery is. If you don't, this is taken from jQuery.com. Fast, concise, DOM traversal, event handling, AJAX, a lot of the stuff that you do in a JavaScript internet application. What does that mean? They call it, this is their logo, their new tagline is write less, do more, which to me sounds like the same thing as less work, more awesome. They take care of some of the menial JavaScript stuff, so you don't have to worry about it. You can focus on making your JavaScript more awesome. So why did we choose jQuery? I dug this graphic off of our internal wiki from January 2008. We evaluated 6 different frameworks you can see here, and I didn't put up the actual, what we were evaluating them against, but jQuery won in almost everything that we looked at. So we chose to build on top of that. We really felt like it was a strong framework, and I think that that was a good choice then, and it seems like an even better choice now. So why should you care? What does this matter to you, the plugin developer? There's 3 things that I kind of want to cover that I think make owie great for you guys. They're the same things that make them great for us internally. The first is consistent look and feel. Yeah, we want your plugins, and I think you probably do too in most cases, to feel like a native application. You want it, or to feel like a native part of our applications. You don't want the user to feel like they've just gone to something completely different. A lot of times you want them to not even know they're using a plugin. You want it to feel like it's just just a core feature. And so you can, the great thing about owie is that you don't have to worry about the styling and whatnot. You just include these components. They're already styled the way that application has chosen to style them, and you get a consistent look and feel with the rest of the application. The other thing is ready-to-use components. You don't have to worry about, I talked about dialogues before, or drop-downs. A lot of that stuff that it's nice to use, and it can give you a cleaner UI and better user experience, but it's a pain to have to code up every time, and you're copy and pasting stuff from the plugin you wrote last week and stuff like that. So it's just ready to go, easy to use. And finally, helpful utilities. We've included some stuff that makes like internationalization easier, or we have AJS.cookie where you don't have to worry about reading and storing stuff from cookies. I always used to have like a boilerplate thing that I would include in anytime I needed to access cookies, and I don't worry about that anymore. I know that AJS.cookie, I can just use that and it's ready to go, and it works, and it's all stored in a conglomerate cookie, so we're not cluttering people's cookies with a bunch of Jira stuff. So that's why we think you should use it. So how do you actually use owie? These are the examples I showed before. This is the dialogue. To create a dialogue in owie, just a few code examples. You can see here, it's in 2 lines you can get obviously this doesn't have the content in it, but to get a dialogue, all you need is I could have written this in 1 line, I suppose, but you just call AJS.dialog, you give it a width and a height and a identifier, and you call show on it, and it takes care of the light boxing, it takes care of all this stuff for you. Inline dialog I showed you before, you just call AJS.inline dialog, you give it a trigger, a jQuery element, and some content to throw in there. Drop down, similar thing. It's actually a jQuery plugin basically, so you give it a jQuery selector and then you can just call .dropdown on it. AJS.format is a string insertion tool. I use this a lot when either doing for internationalization stuff or anytime you're putting dynamic content on a page. So here, say you had some pagination and you wanted to say you were showing a certain number of entries. So this will actually give you, showing entries 0 through 10 of 11. Not a huge deal, but just it makes a lot of stuff really, really simple. Keyboard shortcuts is a really cool one that we've just put into AUI recently. So this is if you want, when a user's on a page, let's say anytime they type CL, you want to trigger some event. So AJS.when I type CL, test click. And I really like this one because I don't even have to explain it to you. You know exactly what it does just by looking at it. Same thing, when I type SF, you execute some function. So, you might be thinking it sounds great, but how do I get this in my plugin? You've seen some of this before in some of the earlier talks. But all you need is to require the AUI plugin resource. So in your velocity file, say, Web Resource Manager, you require com.atlassian AUI plugin, the AJS stuff, and you'll get all of the JavaScript and all of the CSS with that. A little, probably more practical example is you have a JavaScript and a CSS file already in your Atlassian plugin XML, and you include a dependency in that. You're same thing, once you require that resource, you're going to get all that stuff pulled down for you to use. So I want to just break off for a little bit here and do a quick, completely contrived coding example. Can you guys see that? Yeah, that looks pretty big. So what I have here is just a really dead simple plugin. I ran Atlas create Confluence plugin, whatever that Atlas command is, and just added a few things. I added a servlet, really dead simple servlet, just so it will render a page for me. This is my velocity file. All it has is a paragraph tag, hello world. I gave it this, the general Confluence decorator, so that we're not just looking at a blank page. I have an empty JavaScript, empty CSS file. And here in my Atlassian plugin XML, you can see I've just done the stuff for the servlet. There's nothing else. So if we actually look at that, just to prove that I'm not cheating, all it is hello world. So let's say we want to add some AUI stuff to that. I'm also just going to do a lot of copy and pasting for a couple reasons. One is so you don't have to sit here and watch me debug when something goes wrong, and the other is that that's basically what I do in real life anyways. So I'm always working off of a previous example, and I just copy stuff and put it in and tweak it around. So it might be cheating, but that's what I do in real life. So first thing I'm going to do is we're going to want the actual resources that I'm dealing with here. So I've depended on the AJS stuff, and I just have these two. I showed you those empty files. They're not going to stay empty forever, so we're going to include those now. And with this, we're also we have to tell our velocity file that that's the stuff we want. So foo.bar is just the plugin path, and then AUI example resources was the name I gave to that resource package. And then I'm going to show you just how easy it is to add tabs. So I'm going to grab this HTML and plop it in place of this hello world. So you can see here, this is basically, I've done a lot of tabs for random stuff without AUI. This is basically the structure I would use. I have a container, a unordered list with my actual tabs in it, and then these tab panes are just divs. All I've really done is put AUI specific classes on them to make sure they match up. I am going to have to run PI in the Atlas CLI plugin just so it picks up the changes to Atlassian plugin XML. And you notice I haven't written a lick of JavaScript yet, but we have tabs. Just because it just picks up those classes, it picks up that AUI tabs class and all that sub stuff and takes care of everything for you. So that's a pretty easy way to create tabs. And then we'll just throw two more examples in here. In the first tab, I just added a drop down. So basically it's just an unordered list with a bunch of stupid items in here. And then in the second tab, I am going to just add a link that I'm going to have an inline dialog on. So throw that in there. You can see all that is paragraph tab, paragraph tag, and a link on it. And then I could probably actually do this without messing it up by hand. We'll see. So I'm going to call ajs.toInit, which is basically just runs on the once the DOM is ready. And this is why I just copy and paste everything. And so I'm going to call for the dropdown that this had an ID of my dropdown. And so I'm just going to basically, all I'm going to call is a standard dropdown. Not going to give it anything else. I am going to throw a little bit of CSS at it because the default styles, it's white. The little icon is white by default, so it doesn't show very well on a white page. And then I'm going to grab this inline dialog stuff. And you can see here, all I did was inline dialog. I gave it this pop-up link element that I created. And I'm going to point it at the add page content. I stole that from the Confluence dashboard so that I don't have to actually create anything. And we will reload up here. And here we have the dropdown. Just creates, takes care of the drop shadow, does all of this stuff. And then on the second tab, we have the unstyled, add page dialog. So, that's kind of cool or whatever. And no, I mean, it's just really contrived, right? That it's not useful. So I want to show you a little bit of a second example that is also completely contrived, but a little more useful. So in Confluence, we have this update status thing, right? So pops up a little dialogue, and you can, it's a little Twitter or whatever. And so I was thinking it would be cool if you could invoke that with a keyboard shortcut. And I was like, well, this could be a really easy one-line demo, because I'll just try and call whatever Java Confluence function brings up this, creates this content. Couldn't find that. So I was like, well, it's not that hard to recreate anyways. So what I'm going to do is grab this block of JavaScript, throw it in here. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't have to run after the DOM's ready. So I'll just throw it down below. I'll just run through sort of what some of this stuff is. So I have a build status form. All it does is create a form with a text area in it and returns that as wrapped in jQuery. And then here I'm actually creating the dialog. So I'm calling a new dialog, 500 wide by 218 tall. I'm adding a header to it, update status. I'm adding a panel, which is the content is just going to be that this form that I'm creating up here. And then I'm going to add a button on it that's going to actually do the stuff. So all I'm doing is I'm posting to this update status action, and I'm giving it some data, so whatever the value of the actual text area is, as well as the Atlassian token, which you need and can just kind of grab off the page, because Confluence is smart like that. And then if it works, I'm just going to be really stupid and hide the dialogue. It's not going to tell you did anything right, because I'm lazy. And then there's also a cancel button, and we're going to hide the dialog if you hit that. And so show status dialog basically just handles you not creating that dialog more than once. It'll either create it or just show the one that's existing. And then down here at the bottom, when I type the letter U, it's going to execute show status dialog. So let's save that, reload our page here. And I hit U, and of course, there we go. So now I can update my status. This is my status. So I'm going to hit update. Can't be entirely convinced it worked, but here we go. So now the actual real dialogue tells me that it worked correctly, which is kind of cool, right? But this is just in my example plugin, right? But what I really want to do is be able to invoke this anywhere within Confluence. So we heard earlier, Don Brown went over it, and Tim Pedersen talked about it a little too, is the idea of these web contexts, where you can tell Atlassian applications that you want to include resources on an entire page. And so I can take all the same code that I've already written, and all I'm going to do is in the Atlassian plugin XML, up here, I'm just going to add a context of atl.general. The general context just means any non-admin screens. So I'm going to reload that plugin because we changed Atlassian plugin XML. And now let's say we want to be on the dashboard instead of in our plugin, so that we can just do this wherever. I hit U, and you get the same thing. The idea being I just want to show you guys like the power of web context. And another great example of this is JRA 9. Some of you might be familiar with is the user time zones, and has been a big deal, obviously, within Atlassian and also for plugin developers and customers and stuff like that. And someone basically used similar kind of stuff to use Java. They used web context to put a set of JavaScript on every page that just converts the time zone to the user's current time zone. Really simple, something that would take, apparently 600 man hours to fix in real Jira, but to just create a little plugin, you can do that in a couple lines of JavaScript. So we'll jump back in here. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea of how easy it is to start using this stuff. And Tim talked about it earlier. It's easy to use, but it's also really flexible. We've created a ton of stuff within Atlassian using this stuff, and so the dashboard, gadget directory, really complicated bunch of pages within that dialog and stuff is all done within AUI. And so you can start simple, but you can also grow. So I just want to talk a little bit. I know some of you are familiar with AUI, and you're probably more curious, like, what are we doing with AUI? And so I want to talk about where AUI is now, and then I'll talk about where it's headed. So we just released version 3.2. All of the products are now on 3.0 or higher. It's open source. We have documentation out there. It's on Stack, studio.atlassian.com. You can go see the project. You can create bugs. You can get the source, stuff like that. We just sort of introduced the idea of public versus private components. Because before, we just kind of threw everything into AUI, and people could use it, and maybe we would break stuff. But the idea is, so a public component is stuff that we're putting out there, and we're saying we're not going to break this stuff over minor version updates. We're sort of committed to keeping the APIs working in that respect. So private then obviously just means everything else. So how do you know the difference? We're working on improving that process, but right now, if it's listed on the developer documentation on confluence.atlassian.com, then it's available for public use. We're not going to break it on you. There's some private stuff, like the keyboard shortcuts are private right now because we just released them. We had to do some tweaking because of performance problems, and so we broke that over minor updates. So that doesn't mean you can't use private stuff, and I know that you guys, even if I told you couldn't use private components, you would still use them. The idea is just to be aware that the public stuff you can depend on, the private stuff, we might change it, so it just might break across version updates. Sort of where AUI is, where's AUI headed? It's really maturing. It's becoming its own little product where we're really putting resources and stuff into it. We have testing now. We have Selenium tests, and we're putting JavaScript unit tests in. We're building out the infrastructure. Right now, basically, it's a couple people doing it in time that they can steal from other products. But we're hiring on dedicated resources to work on this full time. Community contributions. We want to start allowing you guys to contribute if you want to. So if you're interested in that, we don't have a really formal process yet, but it's going to be, you guys submit a patch and someone will review it and apply it to trunk and stuff like that. If you're interested in that, come find me after. I'll get you in contact with who you need to know to really get going. And even if you're not interested in contributing actual code, feedback, we would love feedback. Any feedback you can give us on this. We're really at a point now in the development of AUI where there's a lot of stuff we're still figuring out, and we're trying to figure out what's the best way to do it for us internally and for you guys, the external developers. And so any feedback you can give us on what's working, what's not working, directions you'd like to see it go, we would love to hear any of that stuff. So that's the what, why, how, and where of the Atlassian user interface library. Hopefully you have you know what OWI is if you didn't know what it is before. You have an idea of how to use it and why you might choose to. And if you were sort of already familiar with it, hopefully you have an idea of where we're going with it. So I want to open it up for questions if anyone has any questions. Yes.